The rain hammered against the Bentley's windows as 6-year-old Emma pressed her small face against the glass, her breath fogging the surface. The storm had turned the usually pristine streets of downtown Chicago into rivers of desperation, washing away the invisible barriers that normally kept suffering hidden from view. But tonight, there was no hiding from what lay curled beneath the flickering streetlight to a figure so small and fragile that Emma's innocent heart immediately recognized what her father's world of boardrooms and billion-dollar deals had taught him to overlook. "Daddy, why is she sleeping here?" Emma's voice cut through the hum of the luxury car's engine, her question hanging in the air like a challenge to everything Marcus Blackwell thought he knew about the world he'd built around his daughter. Marcus glanced in the rear-view mirror, expecting to redirect Emma's attention to something more pleasant, but the words died in his throat. There, huddled against a shuttered storefront, was a woman who couldn't have been much older than 25. Her clothes, once perhaps decent, now clung to her thin frame like wet newspaper. Her dark hair was matted against her head, and even from this distance, Marcus could see her body trembling, and not just from the cold, but from something deeper, more desperate. "She's not sleeping, sweetheart," Marcus said softly, his voice catching as he watched his daughter's eyes fill with tears. She's having a hard time right now." Emma unbuckled her seatbelt before Marcus could stop her, pressing both hands against the window. "But Daddy, she's all wet and shaking. Can't we help her? You always tell me that helping people is what makes us rich inside." The irony wasn't lost on Marcus. Here he was, worth more than most small countries' GDP. And his 6-year-old daughter was teaching him about wealth. He'd spent the last 5 years since his wife's death building walls around his heart, pouring himself into work, convincing himself that providing for Emma financially was enough. But Emma had inherited her mother's compassionate soul, the very thing that had made him fall in love all those years ago. "Please, Daddy?" Emma's voice cracked, and Marcus felt something in his chest crack along with it. Against every instinct his lawyers and security team had drilled into him, Marcus pulled the car over. The woman looked up as the Bentley's headlights illuminated her makeshift shelter, her eyes wide with fear rather than hope. She struggled to stand, probably expecting to be moved along by another person who saw her as nothing more than an inconvenience. Marcus stepped out into the rain, his $1,000 suit immediately soaked through. Up close, he could see that the woman was younger than he'd first thought, maybe early 20s. But her eyes held the kind of exhaustion that aged a person decades. Dark circles rimmed her hollow cheeks, and her lips had a blue tinge that made Marcus's stomach clench with recognition of hypothermia. "I'm sorry," she said, her voice barely audible above the rain. "I'll move. I know I shouldn't be here." "No," Marcus said, surprising himself with the firmness in his voice. "You shouldn't be apologizing." He looked back at Emma, who was watching through the window with tears streaming down her face, then back at the woman. "What's your name?" "Sarah," she whispered, wrapping her arms tighter around herself. "Sarah Chen." "Sarah, I'm Marcus." "That's my daughter Emma in the car. She's 6, and she's worried about you." Marcus felt the words tumbling out before his rational mind could stop them. "We'd like to help, if you'll let us." Sarah's eyes darted between Marcus and the car, confusion and wariness written across her face. "I don't need charity. I just need the rain to stop." "It's not charity," Marcus said, remembering Emma's words about being rich inside. "It's what people do for each other." The next few minutes blurred together like a dream. Sarah's resistance crumbled when Emma rolled down the window and called out, "Please come sit with me. You can share my blanket, and Daddy has hot chocolate in his thermos." The pure, uncomplicated kindness in his daughter's voice seemed to break something inside the young woman. In the back seat, Emma immediately wrapped her favorite Disney princess blanket around Sarah's shoulders, chattering about everything and nothing the way only 6-year-olds can. Marcus watched in the rear-view mirror as Sarah's defensive walls slowly crumbled under the assault of Emma's innocent affection. "Where are we going?" Sarah asked quietly as Marcus navigated through the storm. "Home," Emma announced before Marcus could answer. "You're coming home with us, right, Daddy?" Marcus met Sarah's eyes in the mirror. In them, he saw echoes of his own pain of the loss of everything that mattered, the struggle to keep going when the world felt determined to knock you down. But he also saw something else, a flicker of hope that hadn't been completely extinguished. "If you want to," Marcus said. "No strings attached. A warm place to dry off, a hot meal, and a safe place to sleep. That's all." Sarah's story came out in pieces over the next few hours. A college graduate with a degree in social work, she'd lost her job when the non-profit she worked for lost its funding. Her apartment had gone next, then her car, then her savings as she tried to stay afloat while job hunting. Pride had kept her from calling her elderly parents, who she knew couldn't help anyway. The system she'd once worked within had failed her completely. "I had everything figured out," Sarah said, wrapped in one of Marcus's wife's old robes, holding a steaming cup of soup. Emma had fallen asleep curled up next to her on the couch, treating this stranger like a beloved aunt. "I was going to change the world, help families stay together, make a difference. Now I can't even help myself." Marcus sat across from them, seeing his own reflection in Sarah's story. "I used to think success meant building walls high enough to keep all the problems out," he said quietly. "But Emma's teaching me that sometimes the most important thing you can do is tear those walls down." That night, as Marcus tucked Emma into bed, she looked up at him with serious eyes. "Daddy, Sarah reminds me of Mommy." Marcus's throat tightened. "How so, baby?" "She has sad eyes like Mommy did when she was sick, but they sparkle when she smiles, just like Mummy's did. And she listened to all my stories without checking her phone once." It was then that Marcus realized Emma had been carrying her own grief, her own understanding of loss and hope that went far deeper than he'd given her credit for. His daughter hadn't just seen someone who needed help, she'd seen someone who needed to be seen, to be valued, to be reminded that they mattered. 3 months later, Sarah was thriving in her new position as director of the Blackwell Foundation's Family Services program. The foundation itself was new, born from Marcus's realization that true wealth wasn't measured in dollars but in lives changed. Emma had insisted on being involved in every major decision, her 6-year-old wisdom cutting through adult complications with startling clarity. "You know what I learned?" Marcus told Sarah one evening as they watched Emma teach origami to some of the children at the foundation's new family center. "Emma didn't see you as homeless that night. She saw you as someone who belonged somewhere else, and she made sure you found your way home." Sarah smiled, the kind of smile that reaches all the way to the eyes. "She saved my life that night." "You both did." "No," Marcus said, watching his daughter help a little boy fold a paper crane. "You saved ours." Emma needed to see that her kindness could change the world. "And I needed to remember what my wife always said, that love isn't something you hoard, it's something you share until it multiplies." The rain had stopped weeks ago, but the change it brought to all their lives continued to ripple outward. In helping one person, they learned how to help themselves heal. In opening their door to a stranger, they'd found their way back to each other. And in answering a child's simple question about why someone was sleeping in the rain, they'd discovered that sometimes the most profound act acts of love begin with the smallest acts of courage. Emma's voice drifted across the room as she showed another child how to make the final fold. See, when you open it up, it looks just like hope.